When he started working at the Point in 1956, my uncle said, foremen in the open hearth would pass out cigars when they achieved an 8-hour heat, charging the furnace with iron ore, scrap, and allies at 6 in the morning, and tapping the heat, which is pouring the molten steel, at 2 in the afternoon. You would have thought the melter foreman had a baby, he said, describing the celebration that followed the achievement of making 420 tons of steel in 8 hours. After the oxygen lances were introduced in the number 4 open hearth, the time it took to tap a heat was cut in half. Crews were putting out 400 tons of steel every 4 hours, but that rapid pace of production fed by oxygen is also what created the red dust. Even after electrostatic precipitation filter machines were installed in the 1970s, what they used to do, if they could get away with it, my uncle said, was to open the stacks, disabling the precipitators. They get caught now and then, he said, but by then they'd already had the heats out. The red dust was not just an annoyance, it made some people sick. Harry and Donna Young moved out of Dundalk soon after they discovered their young daughter was allergic to iron ore dust. She would get so sick, Donna Young, a Baltimore County science teacher, told me. She would throw up, her joints would swell up. They thought she had rheumatic fever or leukemia. After conducting allergy tests, doctors told her parents that we had to get to an elevation of 500 feet. So the Youngs bought 5 acres of farmland 45 north of Sparrows Point and its spewing stacks. Eddie Barty Sr. became concerned about the effects of air pollution on his own family after attending a union safety conference in Chicago. Flying home, he pondered a disturbing fact that he had heard at the safety conference. People who live in industrial towns die younger than in non-industrial towns. As the aircraft passed over Baltimore on the way to Friendship Airport, south of the city, we flew over Sparrows Point, he says, and I noticed that the grass and the trees were all red. We could see that from up in the air, but down here you didn't notice it. So I came home all gung-ho and said to my wife, we've got to get out of here. By then, the Bartees were one of an ever-shrinking number of families still living on the Point. Prior to the Great Depression, nearly 9,000 people had lived in the company town. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, 6,000 remained. But as the works expanded, the town contracted. The raising of company-owned houses in the heart of the Sparrows Point community that got underway some weeks ago is to permit additions to the blast furnace battery and open hearth furnaces, the Sun reported in January 1956, as close to 200 families received eviction notices, informing them that they had 60 days to vacate their homes. Throughout the next decade and a half, each improvement led to another round of eviction and demolition. The company offered bonuses of 8 months' rent to those who vacated their homes immediately after receiving their notices. $5 a day were deducted from the bonus for every day a family remained in the home. This get-out-quick bonus was the only relocation assistance Bethlehem provided to families that had lived in the town for 3 generations. Because the rent on the houses was so cheap, with some elderly widows paying as little as $20 a month, many families resisted moving for economic reasons. Others were simply reluctant to leave behind the beloved streets and houses where they had raised families, and many had been raised themselves. But Bethlehem Steel's need for space to grow the works outweighed such sentimental considerations. By the time of the May 4th, 1968 explosion, only 288 homes were left. By 1973, the big managers' houses with their prize-winning gardens, the D Street shopping district, the churches, the schools, the movie theaters and pool halls, the colored community of I&J streets, and the bungalows had all fallen to the wrecking ball. Just short of a century after its founding, the town of Sparrows Point simply disappeared. The raising of the town saddened families that had lived there for 3 generations. Many had recreated there the close-knit kin communities that they had left behind down south in Pennsylvania and New Jersey and overseas. Moving away was especially hard on the elderly, many of whom lost not only low-rent housing, but also the social network that had sustained them for all of their lives. It was hard to watch the town being torn down, a woman named Gwendolyn Zimmerman told the Dundalk Eagle. A lot of people lived there their whole lives, raised their children there. All at once, everything was gone. To be torn up by your roots is not easy. On the day that Willie Cohill and I drove around the Point together, he pointed out the spots where various community landmarks had once stood. This used to be Penwood Park, where they played the Steel Bowl. This used to be the bungalows. This was the high school. This used to be the car barn for the streetcar. Where I saw empty lots or deserted roads or empty mills, he clearly saw another scene superimposed on top of the bleak industrial landscape, a shadow of what once was. Streetcars clanging as they pulled into the station, disgorging men in hard hats holding big steel lunchboxes, women hanging out laundry and praying that the wind would blow the dust from the smokestacks out to the bay. Kids with fishing poles slung over their backs heading off to the creek. Himself an altar boy, ringing the bells for 6 a.m. Mass at St. Luke's during World War II. The pews crowded with steelworkers praying before punching the clock for daylight shift at 7. A town of ghosts. My mom was there for 42 years before they made it go away, he told me. Like many elderly residents, Mrs. Cohill moved to an apartment in Dundalk. It wasn't far away, and it was surely a lot safer, but it wasn't home. I'd still be living down there if they didn't tear it down, 83-year-old Ainsley Dickinson told me at a bungalows reunion. He was 10 years old when his father was transferred to the Point in 1931. My father got me a rowboat, and in winter I'd go around the coves and pick up wood. I ride down there every once in a while, he said. You can hardly tell there was once houses. We had some good times. I miss that old place. When I told him that I was thinking about writing a book about the town called Roots of Steel, he thought for a minute. You should call it Roots of Sadness, he said, because nobody's working anymore, and they lost everything they had.